Hello YouTube and welcome to part 2 of the build and review series for the Hyphy. Actually, first things first, I need to correct my pronunciation from the last video where I was calling it the Hyphy. That is wrong, and I've been told so multiple times. So the proper pronunciation is Hyph, as in wife, apparently. So with that out of the way, today on the show we are going to be doing the actual build of the frame, and we'll be going over it in a little bit of detail. We will also be doing some of the dry fitting of the components to see how everything is going to come together in this build. And of course, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Kiwi F4 that I got from Norm at Beaver FPV, and that just arrived yesterday, literally. So I'm actually going to be changing around what I'm doing with the Hyphy, and I'm going to actually put the Kiwi F4 on it so that I can, I don't know, maybe test some race flight or test some different things. I just really want to see how this board stacks up against the Omnibus F3. I've already done quite a few builds on the Omnibus F3, so I think maybe it's time to try something new. So let's take a look at the frame, get it put together, and see how all these parts are going to sit in this build. Okay guys, so just before we get cracking on building the Hyphy frame, let's take a look at the Flying Lemon F4 flight controller, and let's start off by taking a look at the PDB. So it comes with a PDB that doesn't really have much on it other than having a current sensor right there, and spots for you to solder the ESC power leads. So they go on the sides right here and here, and leads for your battery right here that will just go out of the top, and it has this really nifty little pin header. I'm not sure if you can see how well you can see it there, but there it is. So that little pin header right there is going to actually transmit the signal and ground for your ESCs back to the FC, and it's stackable, and it's a nice and short stack as well. So right here in the middle, these banks right here are ground and motor. So this one here would be motor 4 ground, motor 3 ground, and they're set up right in the middle. Pretty easy for you to access, and it seems like it would make a very nice and clean build. It stacks up with the F4 FC in the following manner. So the two halves just go together like that, and they snap down, and you can actually create a very narrow stack, which I'm actually quite happy for. It's also pretty light. So out of the PDBs that I've used before, this seems like a really nice combo. I am a big fan of the Omnibus F3 and the daughter board, but they do have their shortcomings. Mostly in the fact that you usually have to solder the pin headers shut. I actually have them right here. So this is the FC and PDB that I was gonna use on the Hyphy, and I can already feel that this is much heavier, but it does have the SD slot and this one does not. So that's a trade-off. But I really find myself not using the black box all that much. I mostly tune by feel. So here's the daughter board, which also has like no current sensing or anything like that. Current sensing is done through the Omnibus, which is why you have to have that funky parallel hookup with the two boards, which is kind of annoying, adds extra wires and adds extra weight. So I really like how this F4 configuration works, where the power goes straight to the PDB at the bottom. Whatever the FC needs, it gets, and the signals get routed through that nice little bridge at the bottom. So now let's take a closer look to the flight controller itself. Let's take a closer look at the flight controller here. So it can be used solo without the PDB because it does have the motor and ground, so motor signal and ground pads around the perimeter of the board. So you could use it by itself without the PDB if you wanted to. However, I find that setup with the PDB is going to be a much cleaner build, so I'm going to be using that. This is an F4 chip, an ARM2 processor. It does have the MPU 6000 gyro, and that's in my experience has been a cleaner gyro. It's not as susceptible to motor vibrations, and I've been able to have most of my Omnibus F3s hard mounted with motors hard mounted, no problem. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to do the same with this board. If I have to, I can soft mount it later. It's not too big a deal. Some of the other features that this board has is actually the built-in Betaflight OSD, which allows you to change your settings quite easily without having to use an FTDI tool or use MWOSD. You can just go to the Betaflight OSD tab after you enable it in the configurations, and you can do everything there. I find it to be a better experience, and I really have come to be a big fan of the Betaflight OSD. The wiring on this board here, it's actually a little bit interesting too, because it has an underside for your video. So it comes with video in and video out, so that you can patch your camera in here and send it to the VTX. It also has 5-volt and 12-volt BECs enabled right here, so you can power your camera and power your your VTX from this board. Since I'm going to be using the FX799T, I'm just going to be using a 12 volt port to feed that and feed the 5 volt directly from the VTX, because I find that way I get less flicker on my OSD and it seems to give me less problems that way. So that pretty much covers it for the Kiwi F4. I will be doing a video review of the Kiwi F4 once I get this build all put together and flying, to let you guys know how I feel in terms of tuning and configuration and so on. So let's get started with actually putting the Hyphy frame together and dry fitting some of the components. So we are going to start off by building the Hyphy with the bottom plate right here. So this is the bottom plate. It has some nice big cutouts for the battery, so you can very easily strap your battery around on this quad. It has some nice cutouts over here for you to be able to zip tie down your battery, which is awesome. And here's a neat little feature. It has a recessed camera spot, which allows you to recess the nut that holds it into place, so it keeps it nice and shallow. So we'll be checking that out very soon when we get the build together. It does use the standard camera standoffs right here, so I just need to grab those in a second here. So the way it works on the bottom plate of the Hyphy using these camera mounts from the HS1177 is that it slides in through the bottom this way, and boom. And then there's going to be a nut that goes right there, and your camera is going to sit right there. So it makes it nice and centered. It's an interesting design choice. I kind of like it. This mounting from the bottom here too, I find it a bit unique, and seems to bring the whole profile down a little bit. So I'm interested to see how this is going to work out when we actually put the whole thing together. So we start with the bottom plate with the recessed area facing up, because that's the area where we're going to be putting the ESCs and so on. So we just started with that over there, and we're going to grab some of the screws and the hardware that it came with. And just set it right over there for a sec. And we're going to be putting the longer screws in on each one of the furthest edges on the screw hole layout. So the furthest edge is right there, 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 and there. And we're going to stick it in from the bottom. We're going to put all 4. So now we have the bottom plate with the screws pretty much mounted, and we're getting ready to put the motor arms in. And these motor arms are kind of interesting. They have a nice little cutout over here too. I'm not too sure exactly why they're there. Maybe just to save a little bit of weight, but they are really nice. I like the shape of them and everything else. I like the stiffness, so let's get them slotted into the holes, and we're going to slot them on the second furthest hole onto the screws that we just put down. Okay, so look at that. We have the 4 arms sitting in position. It's starting to look like a quad already. It's starting to look pretty sweet. I freaking love the orange edging, so that's looking awesome. Now let's see what the next step is. Right, this interesting looking X crosspiece is going to brace everything down and hold it all together, and I believe it goes on thusly. Now, the stand-ups. So the stand-ups are actually going to be holding the edges of the frame, which is quite interesting. I like that. These are some neat black standoffs. I also like how they look. And right now I'm just finger tightening. We'll use some proper tools in a sec. Just wanted to get it roughly built here. Okay, so there we have it. We have the arms in place and held together by those lock nuts right now, which is pretty sweet. Feels pretty nice and light. So now we are using the smaller set screws to go through the remaining 4 holes here, and these are gonna actually have a lock nut that is gonna hold them in place, and this is all M3 stuff. So M3 nuts, M3 hardware all the way through. So that's just gonna hold the arm and give it a little bit extra security right there. So this is gonna be fairly stiff, very strong, so no worries there. Okay guys, so we finally gotten the Hyphy torqued down to the proper kilonewtons of force as specified by the manual. so I know that this is going to be pretty solid and good to go. We've gotten the camera mounted, and so the camera mount set up right here and torqued in the bottom right there as well. And I finally figured out what those cutouts on the arms were for. They're so that you can run your battery strap clean through the quad all the way around, or you can fit it in through these two hoops that are open right there. So that's kind of neat. Pretty neat little feature. I'm quite impressed with that. So let's get going now with fitting the PDB and the flight controller here and seeing how they're going to stack up. I've already gone ahead and enlarged the holes around the perimeter of all four so that it could fit nicely around the screws, and I'm going to be setting it up so that the battery plus minus are towards the rear of the quad. That's just how I prefer to wire this one. So there we go, it's going to slot in there. Almost even. There we have it, and now we're just going to screw on a couple of standoffs here, one on each corner. And then two more. Okay, and just like that, we have the PDB in position where it's going to be going. We can see that there's a bit of a gap between the PDB and the frame, so I suspect that that's where you're supposed to slide your receiver if you can. And I'm wondering if this one is going to fit in any way under there. Sort of, maybe. There's this very annoying capacitor on these guys, and they are kind of a pain in the butt. Yeah, that's not going to fit, so I'm going to have to figure out where I'm going to put that later. So the FC is going to stack on with the connector, of course. Okay, so it's stacked on now. That was a bit sketchy. It's very delicate. So there you go. It's just a little bit taller than I was hoping that it could be. And it's going to be a pretty standard one standoff height, but that's okay. We live and learn. Top plate's gonna go over here, and we're just barely gonna have enough room for my VTX. It seems like this is a very short build. I wish I had a couple millimeters more, and I'm wondering if like I didn't increase the height a little bit. But I'm gonna try to keep it as it is. I'm not gonna modify anything yet. Okay, actually, so there you have it. There's the camera. It has to go in the middle. That's a pretty aggressive camera angle, so you're not going to get any less than about 45, which is fine. That's 45 is about what I fly, so this is going to be perfectly alright with me. Yeah, just like that. Perfect. So now to figure out where the VTX is going to go before we move on to the motors here, let's just see if it's going to fit anywhere here. Jesus Lord. Well guys, I'm not sure how the VTX is going to stack up in here, because it definitely will not fit here. I'm quite sure that. Yeah, like it's just about a millimeter short. I mean, maybe I can figure out a way to stack it on there and just run a pigtail out of it from there, but it's tight, man. It's not a lot of space here. I really would hate to have to run it at the top and just have it taped on there and then run a thing. Like, I hate how that looks. But if we have to, I guess we'll do that. Otherwise, I'm going to try to find maybe slightly taller standoffs, or maybe put some shims under the standoffs or something like that. I don't know. And actually, I'm probably just going to talk to Hyphy on the FPV chat right now and see what the hell is going on and how I get this VTX mounted up. But for now, let's keep going and get the motors installed. Alright guys, so we're just about to get the motors set up here, and these are Brother Hobby T2 2206 2600 kV. I heard from lots of people so far that they're absolute monsters, so this is going to be a sweet build to fly. So I'm going to put a little bit of Bluetooth Loctite on the screws, because in my experience when I build, I don't actually seem to remove the motors all that much. Like once I have them in place, I pretty much just leave them there and forget about it. So comes with a nice set of screws. I'm just going to dab the tip of it a little bit on some Loctite, and then we are going to turn it around here, and we're going to put a screw on the corner and get it all set up there. So something like that. Oop. There we go. So we got one. And let's put two on. So once I have the motors, the first 2 screws in place, I usually don't leave them very tight, just so I can center the motor nicely and then come around and grab the other 2 screws. And then I just do a star pattern to tighten it down so that it tightens down evenly and they all get torqued about the same. So you just need a little dab of blue Loctite. Some people use red, I think. I wouldn't use red. It's too strong in my opinion. So boom, there we go. Check to see that it is centered in there. And if you're happy with it, you just start torquing it and just go in a star pattern. So start with the loosest one, tighten it up, and go to the opposite one, tighten it up a little. And just keep doing that until it feels really nice and tight. You can't tighten it no more. Be careful not to strip stuff. So now just a little bit more. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how tight those are, and they look freaking sweet. So let's just go ahead and keep going. Okay guys, there we have it. We have the 4 motors now installed and torqued down as well, and this thing is already starting to look pretty freaking mean. Like, damn, look at that thing. It's freaking awesome. So now what I'm gonna do is set up, position the ESCs where I want them here on the quad and tape them down with some electrical tape, and just so we can measure out and figure out where all this stuff is gonna go. So I think it's gonna be, actually, I think we can remove some of these components here for now because we already know that they are fitting fine. So we know the camera's gonna go there and it fits, and we know that FC fits here as well, so we're just gonna very carefully remove it. Okay, so I need to figure out here how the wires are gonna actually match up here. So we have ESC plus minus, EC plus minus on the sides. That is, this is actually supposed to be the rear of the quad, and I think they're gonna fit somewhat like this, maybe? Nope. They're gonna fit like that. So the wire is just gonna curve a little bit around the standoff and then go off into the sides there and fit over there. So I'm just gonna put one down here. That should be sufficient for my purposes of figuring out the length. Alright guys, so that pretty much concludes the dry fitting. I know how the components are going to be laid out now. I know where I need to cut stuff. This should be fairly easy to build once we figure that out. The only thing that I'm still missing of the puzzle is where the hell to fit this VTX right here. It doesn't seem to want to fit inside of the stack. I don't want to have to mount it somewhere weird, so I'm either going to end up having to get some taller standoffs for it, or maybe I'll just go bug Hyphy at FPV chat and see what he tells me to do, how he made this work. So that pretty much concludes this episode, guys. I hope you subscribe to the channel, because next week I'll be coming out with the build of the Hyphy, and we'll be going through everything, soldering every bit together and getting this thing flying indoors so that we can test it out. And I hope you learned something today, and I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll catch you next time.